A job to a man is a huge deal. It's important to women, but it's a huge part of a man's identity. And so anything that threatens his identity is going to threaten his sense of power, his sense of the ability, his strength. And so if I know something, that's an obvious one, that's going on, yeah, he's quiet because he's focused on how he's going to get another job or try to save his current one. She wants to separate it between, oh, that's what happens at work, and this is what happens between us. So as much as most women are told that women are all intertwined, what happens in one area of their life spills over to the next, but men keep stuff separate. Well, the truth is men try to keep stuff separate, but we don't always keep it separate when emotions are involved. When something's overwhelming, we try to keep it separate, but we can't. It's like a problem we have to fix. And this spills over into relationships because as much as a man wants to connect with you, he really has a hard time with that when he's overwhelmed with a problem that seems bigger than him. Hi, this is Bob Grant, and today we're going to talk about how to decode his silence, 3 clues to understanding a man's nonverbal communication. Now, I've talked with enough women to know that when a man's upset and when he is just being quiet, it looks the same. And they can't tell. Because oftentimes with a woman, even if she's not saying anything, you can tell. There's a look on her face. There's her trying not to act upset, but it's just painfully obvious that she's upset. And a lot of times a woman would just tell you, I'm upset or I'm mad. She may not always tell you why, but you have some idea she's upset because she wants you to know, I'm upset with you. I'm upset with you and you need to do something about this, whether it's said that way or not. But let's go over 3 clues about understanding a man's behavior and really what's the difference between those two, because it can make a big difference with connecting with a man versus alienating him further. And I'm not putting the blame on that with women as much as if there's something we can do to be helpful, let's do that. If there's something that's harmful, then let's don't do that. So let's do 3 things. Number 1, and as I say that, I'm reminded of the fact, let's make a distinction between normal silence and we'll call this being upset silence or when something's bothering him. So normal silence from a man is fairly typical. When I've talked with women over the years, I talk about men have a place in their mind. It's called the nothing box. If you've gone through Deep Desire, we talked about that in that program. And that nothing box is a place where men really don't think about anything. It's our natural state. Thinking involves work, involves effort. And unless we are focused on something, kind of like, this, in the same way with moving a car, the car stays still unless there's gas put on it or there's some force that is exerted on it to make it go forward. That's the way it is with a man thinking, with him doing stuff. So normal silence for men is simply normal. In other words, there's not something to focus on. Why do I need to be thinking? Why do I need to be communicating? I'm simplifying this. When I talk with women, and by all means, ladies, leave a comment below. I'm always learning about ladies. Is when I talk with women and I explain this to them, a lot of times, actually every time, unless there's an exception, they'll say, how do you do that? And I'll say, how do you do what? And they'll say, how do you not think about anything? And I'm like, you just don't think. And they still don't get it. How do you not think? Put another way, what they tell me is, how do you just turn your mind off? And they look at me kind of fascinated, like I'm talking about something that is just foreign, like a foreign language to them. So I'd love to know your comments on that. But for men, that's normal. So in general, that's why if I'm talking with a man and he's there with a couple, as part of a couple, is if he's quiet, then I'm just going to assume there's really nothing wrong. At least that's my assumption. Doesn't mean it's always right. If he's upset, though, it's not going to be simply by him being quiet. That's not going to be the clue. What's going to be more of the clue is what's going on around him. So she asks him a question and he doesn't respond. Okay, he's upset about something. I don't know what. If she asks him an innocent question, and innocent means non-leading. So a leading question is, don't you want to be here? Well, if he's honest, he says no, but he knows he's going to make her upset if he says so. So he says, sure. Okay. I don't know how upset he is. That's not necessarily him just being quiet. He just doesn't want to answer. So when he's upset, one of the ways I tell the difference is, I say clue number 1 is going to be how he reacts when you ask him a question. So is he responding in a way that makes sense? So if you're asking him something and he's giving you short answers, he's upset about something. Now, again, if you ask him a yes or no question, ladies, he's going to answer yes or no. That's not him being upset. You ask him a yes or no question. Do you want to go out for dinner? No. Why not? See, when you do that, I know what you're trying to do is you're trying to engage him in conversation. With men, that comes across as you being manipulative. I'm not saying that's your intention, but it comes across like you're trying to lead him. Technically, it's called a leading question. And men don't like leading questions. If you ask me a yes or no question, I give you an answer, and then you keep talking. Why did you bother to ask me to begin with? See, that's the part we don't like. So his reaction to you, or, if we ask him a question and it's a short answer, again, if it's not yes or no, because that gives me some idea. Again, it's when it's disconnected from what his actual words are saying. So if he says, you ask him something painful, if you say, "Are you upset with me? I know I yelled at you yesterday, and I'm sorry, but are you upset with me for that?" If he says no, okay, how could he not be somewhat upset? We don't know the degree. Maybe it's a little upset, maybe a lot. Okay, and granted, that's a yes/no question. We want to stay away from those. And again, remember with determining as far as his nonverbal communication, you don't have to, it's not something you're going to interpret it 100% correctly. All we're really asking is about making good guesses. If we can make good guesses, then you're 80% of the way there. That's all we really get is the ability to make good guesses. So if we're focused on good guesses, I don't necessarily have to remember the answer exactly what it is as much as I just have to be close. So I'm going to look for his reaction first. Again, not what does his reaction mean, is his reaction off? Trust your intuition with this. And I know you party is going to want to know, well, what is it? All we want to do initially is it off? Because if it's off, what that means for you is you need to slow down a little bit. Just slow down because something's off and you can't figure it out. Don't try to rush to figure it out. Slow down. I know that's counterintuitive. Slowing down is how you open a man up, not going faster. Going faster just shuts him down. I know it's anxiety relieving for you. It's not for him. Going faster just flusters him. And that's why you can share and talk like you would with your girlfriends, and that you feels really good for you to get it out. And part of you's like, isn't this better? And he may say, yes, sure. Inside, it's not better. He just got flooded. So notice the reaction number one. Clue number two is what's going on in his life the last couple of weeks. In the last 2 weeks, is there something that's bothering him? Is there something that's upsetting to him? Is there something at work going on? Is there has something happened? Is a parent sick? When I'm talking with women, and usually when there's a breakup and they want to get back with their ex, and or the relationship's really strained, and there's all of a sudden now there's this distance between them. One of the first things I'm doing with them when we're talking to a new client is I'm asking for details about the last month, but it can be, the last month, or it can be the last couple of weeks. And I don't necessarily what I'm listening for, but I'm looking for anything that's going to be either overwhelming, stressful, resentful, something. And one of the most obvious ones I hear is they'll tell me how things were going well for the past few months, past 6 months, even past year. They say, yeah, but this past month, he's been in a funk. He just seems so withdrawn. He's not as affectionate as he used to be. He doesn't bring flowers like he used to. And then I start asking, well, what's happened the past couple of months? And they say, well, nothing. And what they're focusing on is between her and him. See, there's nothing, she says, that I can tell between us that's really going on. We don't argue. We don't fight. Okay, well, anything else you might think? Well, yeah, I mean, he did get, he was told that they're going to lay him off in a couple of weeks. And then she just keeps talking. And then there was this disagreement we had. I'm like, whoa, stop. So you're telling me he's going to get laid off in a couple of weeks? That he was giving us 2 weeks notice? Well, yes, and that's bothered him some. And this is where your understanding part comes in. This is where empathy is a big part. A job to a man is a huge deal. It's important to women, but it's a huge part of a man's identity. And so anything that threatens his identity is going to threaten his sense of power, his sense of the ability, his strength. And so if I know something, that's an obvious one, that's going on, yeah, he's quiet because he's focused on how he's going to get another job or try to save his current one. She wants to separate it between, oh, that's what happens at work, and this is what happens between us. So as much as most women are told that women are all intertwined, what happens in one area of their life spills over to the next, but men keep stuff separate. Well, the truth is men try to keep stuff separate, but we don't always keep it separate when emotions are involved. When something's overwhelming, we try to keep it separate, but we can't. It's like a problem we have to fix. And this spills over into relationships because as much as a man wants to connect with you, he really has a hard time with that when he's overwhelmed with a problem that seems bigger than him. So if I know what's going on in the last couple of weeks of his life, and something big like that is, okay, that gives me a clue, a really good one. Oh, that's what's going on. That's what he's overwhelmed with. And see, he doesn't have the words to know what to ask for. He can't ask you to go get him another job. Can you put in a good word for my boss? Even if you could, that would be embarrassing. So he's left to try to figure out the problem and go inside. And finally, clue number 3 is what is unresolved between you or him? Sorry, clue number 3, what is unresolved between you and him? Is there an ongoing fight or disagreement? Is there some issue that you just can't seem to work through? And it won't, most of the time, it won't be something that's happened, like yesterday or obvious. What happens is something that's unresolved, especially for men, is it accumulates. I tell an example, if he had 10 pounds on his shoulder, 10 pounds isn't going to hurt you, but having 10 pounds on just on one shoulder after day wears on you. It affects your posture. It affects how you walk. It affects how you sit. Anyone that's had a sore spot in their shoulder or back or after doing something athletic or working knows that you don't realize what you take for granted not being in pain. And then when you have a pain spot, it doesn't have to be the most intense. Some of the toughest pain spots are when there's nothing you can do to relieve it. And see, that's what it feels like to him when there's something unresolved between you and him. Unresolved oftentimes means he feels like there's nothing he can do to make you happy except to give in to what you want. And in his mind, he doesn't feel like he can give in to it. And I'm just going to make stuff up. If it's, I need you to agree with me, that you need to have a better relationship with my mom. I need you to agree to me that, you need to apologize because you were a couple minutes late. I don't really have great examples with this one, but remember, if it's unresolved, we don't want to focus on one person winning. See, I just had a couple the other day, we were talking, and they're engaged. And I told them my belief, what I've read and studied is, as opposed to focusing on a compromise, what we want to focus on is making a great offer to the other person. So this is a little bit of a teaser. I can go into this more later. But it generally works like this, as opposed to let's each get half of what we want, which means neither one of us is going to be content. That's my biggest problem with compromise, is we have had each person, the fiance with the male and the female, and her job was to listen to what he said and for her to make him a great offer that he would love. Now, it had to be something she could live with, but for her to make the offer to him as opposed to her talking him into what she wanted. Same with him. You're supposed to listen to what she wanted and then come up with a great solution that she's going to love. Now, it takes more effort. It's easier I just want to prove my point. I just want to go over, and you can do it that way. That's the traditional way. But with them, I found, and I've seen this with other couples, when they take the time to do this, it's amazing how well your partner can come up with a solution that you hadn't even thought of, and a solution that you like. Because remember, if that's the goal, it's called an irresistible offer. Make your partner an irresistible offer. There are people who have done this in business and negotiations. It works fantastic because your partner knows things about you and what you like in a bigger picture that you and I don't know. We think we do. So if it's unresolved between you and him, I would go to that. And what we're making guesses. He's quiet. So is he upset, not upset? Part of the reason we just ask. And if he says nothing, then that's fair that we say, you seem kind of quiet. I'm just wondering. Now, this is sometimes a tougher part, is that you may want him to open up. Part of the respect part is that you respect him enough that if he doesn't want to open up, he doesn't have to open up. It doesn't mean you tolerate bad behavior. It doesn't mean if he's acting rude or dismissive that you should just let him get away with that. It's not that. as much as you're setting the tone for you'll be respectful. And part of respectful is if he says no or nothing's wrong, even if he's not telling the truth, it's his job as a grown man. If someone asks you if something's wrong and you say nothing, then you cannot blame them for not continuing to try. You can't. I mean, I've had couples where the guy would do this, and I would, make it a point to say it respectfully. He would say nothing, and I would say to him, "I say, well, I hear you. You say nothing, and okay, nothing may be wrong, but she just asked it." I'm pointing to the wife. I say, "She just asked it the way I want her to ask it." She was respectful. She was, and I don't know how to get her to ask you any nicer or more respectful than that. So if you like the way she asked this, I'm asking you to tell her what's wrong because I don't know of a better way for her to ask unless you just, and I have to know him to do this. I said, unless you just want to stay angry. And I said, I'm not talking down to you. I said, but that's the best way I know as a man to be asked by a woman. Most of the time when I say this with a man, he'll pause, especially if I give him a chance to pause and think about it. And if he pauses, that means he's upset about something. I still don't know if he's going to talk about it, but if he's not upset, and this is where you'll find the sincerity, he'll say, no, really, I'm not upset. And then they'll tell you what else is going on. I've just got this stuff at work. We're expanding, we're doing this other stuff, and I'm okay. But see, if we push it a little bit, all we're doing is we're being respectful and we're asking for clarity based on what we see. We're not telling, we're asking. We're not forcing, we're suggesting. But the final decision's his. All right, those three things, if you'll play around with them, it will give you an advantage with men. What it does is it just puts you closer. So we're not after 100%. We're not after guaranteed. All we're after is getting you closer. And as the man sees you do this, it makes him feel like you get him. You're the one woman that understands him just because you got within 80%. It's called guessing good. So if you like this and have more questions or things I can help you with, be sure and visit us at relationshipheadquarters.com. We have some goodies for you there. If something specific in your life is going on, if you tried and tried, I've got people that just emailed us, and these are the ones we're after, is they've tried a lot of stuff and just nothing's working. Part of what our focus on is it doesn't have to be that hard. Is if it's love that you're after and it's your time, and that's more your decision, is that sometimes it's just an understanding. Sometimes there's just one thing that's in the way. And that's what I get a lot of fun out of watching women, is that once we find out what's in the way and that they're closer than they realized, and then love starts to come into their life, that's why I do this for a living. So if you're watching on the podcast or even on YouTube, leave us a comment below. I'd be interested to see what you think about this. And be sure to hit that like button. And I'll look forward to talking to you next time.